All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. This is going to be the 10th episode of Living Intentionally. And this episode, we have Bob Taylor with us. And I'm very excited because it's someone that I've been, trying to set up for the past couple of months. So it's been a while that we've been in talks about getting this going, and schedules finally met and we were able to get together. So I'm very excited for that. And really just trying to talk to you about your time in the military and the Air Force, and really learning about your story, and after serving, how you've gotten through your service and stuff like that, and now how you're helping the veteran community and stuff like that. So definitely, kind of just give us a background, Bob, on who you are and what you're currently doing now.
Sure. So I'm a Midwest, grew up in Michigan, went to Michigan State University um, as an engineer. And on my senior year, uh, kind of heard a voice from my dad saying he always wished he would have learned to fly. He had passed away a few years earlier. And I just so happened to be walking in front of the Air Force recruiter and took a right turn. 9 months later, I was in officers training school and then on to B 52 navigator training. And I served a total of um, just under 6 years on active duty, flew 11 combat missions during Operation Desert Storm. And I decided to leave active duty and go into a medical device company. Found a lot of success with that, and went on to. I've started now 5 different companies. I've sold a couple, and uh, I'm a founder of. I've founded the Patriot Promise Foundation, and I've also written a book called From Service to Success.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's kind of the big picture of where I've been and where I'm at now.
Awesome. So what tell us a little bit about the book. What's the book about?
So the book is a little bit about how when I left active duty, about 6 months after combat, I started experiencing just hellacious nightmares. And
Mm,
it kind of surprised me because I didn't really feel personally affected because I was flying an aircraft, didn't experience hand to hand anything, but the nightmares were very vivid, very violent, and kind of told me that something was going on in my subconscious to deal with all that. But about 6 months after they started, they went away, and so I really didn't get any help. And about 16 years later, the nightmares came back, and I got behind the 8 ball, and I decided to get help at the VA. And so it was about 8 years after I started getting help at the VA that I decided to write this book. And I researched, and it took me 6 years to write the book, but it's just about a little bit about my journey. It's about, I interviewed several other veterans and their experience and found that there's a lot of commonality between veterans who are kind of struggling after they leave active duty and try and find their new role in life. And so that's what I wrote about. And it's aimed at helping people. The subtitle of the book is New Mission, New Purpose, and a New Journey to a Great Life. And so I just try and provide a roadmap of how people can, maybe they're in a tough spot right now, but I'm here to say that there's are brighter days ahead, and the days in military might not have been the best of your um, those weren't the best days of your life. I think you've got an incredible future ahead of you.
yeah, I definitely can agree with that, because I definitely have seen it myself, and especially being on, I have like 180 episodes so far on the podcast, and I've talked to a lot of veterans across America, and it's definitely a huge thing where when people get out and they feel like they don't have a purpose, or they feel like their best days are behind them, and now, like, you live this lavish life, or you've done all these things in the military, and now it's like, okay, well, now I'm just some civilian who doesn't do anything, and I work at 9 to 5, and now I just go to work and I go home, and now it's just a very different lifestyle, and you're not used to that, right? And especially like, especially the people that, it's definitely everybody, but I also think it also plays a huge part in like the combat veteran community, because especially those guys that were either part of MARSOC or recon, or the infantrymen, like the people who were out there really getting it in, they were constantly on rotation and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden their life just kind of just coasts and slows down, and it's like, dude, that's not what my life was. Like my wife was this high tempo for years, and now all of a sudden it's just died down, and
Yeah, the tougher times are definitely when it gets quieter and you have time to think and you have time to experience all the thoughts that you have in your mind. You don't have, the distraction of, combat operations, or what we've referred to as ops tempo. It just slows down, and now you have to deal with what's going on in your mind.
yeah, yeah, and I got a friend that someone that I've had on the podcast before, Chad Robichaux. He said that he was a 5-time uh Iraq, Afghanistan war veteran, force recon Marine. And that's what he was saying. He was like, dude, I never had time to think about anything because I was constantly in a war zone. I was constantly on deployment. And then when I got back, I was prepping for UFC fights, and I was doing this and I was doing that. So he's constantly on the move. And then all of a sudden your life slows down, and 5 years of thoughts start hitting you, because now, like you said, you have this time to just sit there and start thinking about everything you hadn't been thinking about, like all the birthdays you missed, all the time you missed, and all these different things. So what was it specifically that drove you to write the book? Like, why did you decide like it was something that you had on your heart? Like, why was it something that you wanted to do?
Well, my son was working for a gentleman by the name of Bob Proctor, who's he's a disciple of Napoleon Hill, who wrote the book uh, Think and Grow Rich. And Bob's an author in his own right, but uh, he was also in the movie called The Secret. So a lot of people that are in that kind of personal positive development are aware of Bob Proctor. My son was in charge of making all of his videos, and Bob invited me to a special 1 week event. My son said, "Dad, you got to come up with what's your big idea." And I threw a couple at him. And he said, "No, Dad, you got to come up with a big idea." And so that was kind of the birth of the Patriot Promise Foundation. And the purpose of the Patriot Promise Foundation is to create the Patriot Promise Academy, which is aimed at helping veterans discover their true passion and their true purpose in life, assess where they're at right now, and then start to create a roadmap. Well, before I could do that, I had to know what I was talking about, and I felt like I needed to write this book, From Service to Success. And so it was triggered in that, and then it kind of echoed what I was feeling personally in seeking this treatment and just learning that there are so many veterans that are struggling with the same issues. So, from what I understand, there's about 22 million veterans in the US. And of those, about 11 million are struggling to adjust to their life after service. Just an interesting story. I take my books. I get donations from people that go to patriotpromise.org. They can buy a book. We automatically donate one, or they can donate more. But I take those donated books to VAs. And I dropped some off at the VA Battle Creek in Michigan. And I was talking to a lady there that was a volunteer, and her son was an Air Force meteorologist, he's a weather guy, and he's struggling. So it's not just the guys that are in combat or were faced with, hellacious trauma. It's people that dedicated their lives to something that they thought was greater than themselves, had a calling for. Boot camp or officers training school prepared them to do their job at the highest level, and then all of a sudden they're out and they don't know where they fit and they don't know how to determine what to do. And so I think that when you're in the military, like your dreams, like for me, I always wanted to fly, and here's my chance. And so I loved what I did. And unfortunately, there's not a job for a navigator when you get uh, out of the Air Force. So fortunately, I had a degree in engineering, and I could kind of step right in. But it's tough. It's tough for guys or gals that um, were pursuing a dream or felt like they were trained at the highest level, and then now they're out.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right, and it's too. It's like you said. You know, any one person, right? Anyone, no matter what your job was, it's just a different. You know, you go from being, especially as an active duty Marine or whatever branch you're in, you go from being surrounded by like-minded people, and you go from being around like that military-esque bearing, and then you get out and you don't have that anymore. And even like even myself, like when I got off of active duty and I immediately went into to a civilian job, the camaraderie is different, the jokes are different, the mannerisms are different, the
Right.
culture is different, you know. And you know, when you're in high school, you talk about culture shock, you know, a huge, that's really what it is, especially like when you think about it, like the average person who serves is 18 to 20 years old. So their formative years of being an adult is the Marine Corps or the Army or the Navy or Air Force, and so when they get out, their adulthood is very different than their peers, and what they've been through and the way that they've been treated and the things that they've had to endure are very different than their peers. And now just the way that they react to things is different. The way that they receive things or perceive things is different. So it's definitely a very different way of living, especially. And that's why when you walk into a room and you meet other veterans, even if they're not in the same branch as you immediately start to drift towards them, and you start to, you know. And I've noticed this in the three different civilian jobs that I've had. All the veterans have always kind of gotten together in a group, and they've created these teams or these groups, and they've
Yeah.
worked a lot better with others, rather than working with
Well, you don't
civilians.
have to ask another Marine or another veteran if they speak sarcasm, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's part
And
and parcel of who we are.
yeah, you know, and like you said, it definitely is, you know. And I also think too, like when were you in the Air Force, sir? What years?
So I started in '87
Okay.
and finished up active duty in '92, and then reserves from '93 to 2005.
Yeah. So and the reason why I asked that is I think that the transformation process and the separation process for you is very different than it is now in 2023. Like now in 2023, we're now finally getting a really good handle on how to take care of our veterans as they're transitioning out. Like now, the different policies that are being put in place, and it's because of things like this. It's because of different research that's being done, and it's because of conversations that are being had, you know, and different programs that are being created to take care of the veterans as they get out and they transition. Because a lot of things just weren't known, or they were known, or and people, you know, a lot of people still have that idea like, oh, hey, it's not broke, don't fix it. And then it's like, well, actually, it's pretty broken. We need to
Yeah.
fix it. And
Well, it has improved, and I've witnessed there's a lot of people that are dedicated to try and help veterans transition. I would say that it's probably still inadequate,
oh yeah,
and
100%. Yeah,
and that, there's efforts to try and find veterans a job. There's
yeah.
wounded warriors. There's tunnels to towers, and
Hmm.
there's these veteran service organizations that help. But there, the thing that I feel I discovered when I wrote the book is there's no comprehensive program to help a veteran go from point A to point B and not just find a job, but to really discover where their passion is and how do we help them reach their full potential.
Mm,
I think veterans have some phenomenal skills, right?
yeah, yeah.
Teamwork.
See,
Uh,
I think going off of what you're saying, sir, and I definitely agree with what you're saying. I think though that the military and the Marine Corps and all the branches, we need to do a better job of helping these veterans or at the time, these military members find their purpose before they transition out
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
at that point, well, this has actually been a constant conversation topic for the past couple of weeks amongst me and a community of veterans and military members, talking about identity and how people they identify as a Marine or a sailor or a soldier, and then they find their identity so much in that thing, and then once they get out, they feel as if their identity's lost and they no longer have it. So we were talking about that, and then really we started to talk about how we need to start finding our purpose outside of the military so that when we do get out, we do know, hey, this is where I'm going. This isn't the end. This is just the next chapter of my life.
It's a
And
chapter
this is
book,
where I'm
right?
planning on going. And I think that's a lot of where people miss the mark, right? But at the same time, it's a tough thing. And I say that because as a staff sergeant of Marines, I'm constantly talking to my junior Marines about that. Hey man, like what are you trying to do with your life? Where are you trying to go? What is your purpose? What do you feel like you're called to do? What are your attributes? What is the thing that you love to do? Okay, cool. You love to do that. All right, how do we make this something that you can do outside of the Marine Corps? And a lot of times it's on the individual person. Like we can only do so much, and if that person doesn't pick up the mantle and that person doesn't want to find a new purpose or the next purpose, then what can we really do about that?
Well, I kind of point out that it took a boot camp or an officer's training school to take us from, I call it from many to one, right? We're all individuals, and then when we go through that experience, we come out with this very strong sense of mission and purpose. And we all go through our specialized training, and uh, everything is aimed at that mission and improving and getting better and better. And I say, well, if it takes a boot camp to go into the military, then there needs to be a reboot camp to reboot once we get out. And part of that reboot is that discovery of our purpose. And the other thing I'll say is going into the military, it's not a cakewalk. Some people make unbelievable sacrifices in the time and energy that they put into their training and learning, and you know it's hard work. Well, guess what? The next chapter of your life is hard work. And so to go into the next phase, um, veterans need to be willing to kind of take it on as a new mission to really discover and do the hard work to find their next purpose.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Because it's on the veteran, it's on them to figure out like, hey, what am I gonna do? Why am I gonna do it? And also just to get it going, right? But again, I think in my opinion, I think that's a lifelong thing. Sorry, my son had needed some help. Um, no, yeah. So I think in my opinion, lifelong as people as individuals, our purpose changes as life goes on. Like myself, my when I was 18, my purpose was, at that time joining the Marine Corps, serving my country and service. I'm a huge person on service. Then I become a father, and now my purpose is to be there for my family, take care of my children, take care of my wife, be a man of the house, be a man of God, right? Serve my community, serve people. So, like, I think that as we continually grow as individuals, our purpose changes. Our purpose changes and develops throughout years of growth, of years of sanctification. As the years go on, our purpose continues to develop in my thought process.
It absolutely does. And, I'm a CEO of a company and I interview everyone that comes to work here. Um, so I'll ask people, what is, forget about the job interview. What is it that you really love to do? What makes you wake up in the morning excited? Or what could you see yourself doing that would make you really excited? And I'll get people that say, no one has ever asked me that. And I don't doubt it. Um, so I I do think that every veteran has a responsibility to kind of do the hard work, but at the same time, they need a roadmap. They need a
Yeah.
game plan for how do I discover that. They um, my son's doing a documentary about the name of the documentary is called The Death of Recess. It's about how when we start out in education in kindergarten, 98% of kids score really high in creativity. By the time they're through high school or college, it's down to 2%. It's like school systems have squeezed out all of our creativity. And guess what? The number one thing you need to succeed in life is creativity.
Hmm.
You need to be able to think and imagine about what a future could be if certain things came into being. And
Yeah.
so a lot of people don't have that skill set or they've lost it or they haven't,
Hmm.
worked it for a while. So that's what the Patriot Promise Foundation is really aimed at is trying to give veterans that little boost of imagination or creativity to really discover what could be. And the other thing is it's hard to be really creative and imaginative when you're suffering from depression. And
Yeah.
that was something that I suffered with for a long time. Was depression, irritability, and anger. And so when I finally went to get help, I realized I just wasn't the person I wanted to be. Uh, Forget about my business success, forget about all that other stuff. Um, I just I wasn't experiencing the life I wanted to.
Mm. And why was that? Like, what makes you, like, when you look back at it, what was it that was causing you to not experience life the way that you wanted
Yeah,
to?
so when we go into the military, we take whatever baggage we had along with us, right? So they reprogram our mindset for a new mission, new purpose, but we carry a little baggage with us. So if we had childhood trauma or we had other difficulties, that shows up. So when I got out, I mentioned about the nightmares I had. Well, just because the nightmares stopped didn't mean I wasn't struggling. And just like a lot of veterans, we think that, hey, I'll power through it.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
I'll fix it. I can handle it.
Hmm.
And the truth is, I waited 16 years too long.
Mm.
I that's my one regret in life is that uh, I didn't get help sooner.
Yeah.
the The challenge is I went through um, you know years of psychology sessions and all that. Learned a lot about myself, developed coping skills, um, and we don't have all the tools to fix things ourselves. So those treatments
Hmm.
and people reaching out and getting the help that they need is super critical.
Yeah. Well, and and it's like, you're saying, you waited so long to get the help, and it really stinks because I talk to so many veterans that say the same thing. They're like, yeah, I waited. I knew I had a problem, but I didn't want to face it. Or, all the or I hear a lot of times like, oh, the VA isn't helping me and it's not a good place to go. So I'm just not going to go anywhere. And, and I'm like, well, that's a backwards attitude. Or for instance, I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and I had made the comment. I was like, because someone had recommended, counseling at the VA or whatever. And I had said to them, I was like, listen, man, I was like, the last time I went to a counselor, it was a civilian who had never deployed and who had never gone overseas. And I couldn't relate to them and it didn't help me at all. And the person that I was talking to said, okay. They were like, let me ask you a question. I was like, okay. They said, they were like, if you got cancer tomorrow, would you only go to a doctor that's had cancer? And I was like, what are you talking about? And they were like, well, they've never had cancer. They can't simply know how to fix it. They can't simply know what you're talking about because they've never had cancer. And I was just like, well, but, and then I thought about it and I realized like how dumb I sounded. And, and that was the biggest thing about it, right? Is that we have these preconceived notions or these preconceived ideas, or realistically, we just make up excuses as to why we shouldn't and or need help. And we don't want to face the fact that, listen, you know what? It's okay to need help and it's completely normal to, as a grown man, need to speak to somebody about what's going on.
Yeah.
And but it's also a breath of fresh air to, hear from someone like yourself, saying, hey, listen, you know what, man, I wish I had done it sooner.
The other thing that I would say is, right out of the gates, I had a phenomenal psychologist that I was assigned to. But later, I was assigned to another one, and the connection just didn't work for me.
Mhm.
And so I remember learning that you're not stuck with any one psychologist. If the connection's not there and you don't feel good about it, go find someone else.
Mhm.
Uh, Reach out to someone else, because you have to have that trust and that ability to relate and be honest with the person that you're talking to, and you have to feel good about it. At the end of the day, maybe it might not be the first session, but after a couple, you should feel pretty comfortable with who you're talking to, and if you don't, find someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think that's a huge, I thank you for saying that because I think that's the biggest thing. Is I think that it's very hard to find someone that you feel comfortable enough with, sharing your innermost self with, and being able to speak your mind. Like I'm lucky. I'm me and my wife have an amazing relationship. Like my wife knows everything there is to know about me.
Yeah,
Like if there's
absolutely.
if there's anything in the world that needs to be known, my wife knows. But I think that it's very important and it's healthy for everyone to know someone or have someone that they can reach out to and that they can speak to. So one of the last questions that I really would have for you, Bob, is now, having written your book and having started this program, how do you move forward, right? Because you've had a lot of things happen in your past. You've gone through a lot of, trials and tribulations with your service and with your mental health and stuff like that. How do you move forward from all of that daily? How do you intentionally, get started, win the day, do all these different things that you're doing with these businesses? Like how do you make that happen?
So I just had a state of the company meeting and shared with everyone. I've been in a professional career for 40 years.
Oh
That
wow.
includes my Air Force time and time before that. 30 years of that's been in medical device. And so, I've got a plan that's going to take me through the year 2030, and then, who knows, but I've got this phrase that I'm uh, working on called finish strong. So I want to finish my career absolutely at the top of my game. And so I've communicated to the company the vision for the next 7 or 8 years, and I want to be able to create wealth for every one of my employees. And I've laid out a roadmap of, okay, we're going to do an employee stock ownership program. We're going to achieve certain performance levels, and I'm going to be able to generate wealth for every employee. So that's one segment. The other one is the Patriot Promise Foundation, which starts with from service to success and getting that book into the hands of, I'm hoping to get 100,000 books into the hands of veterans through donations and through purchases and things like that. And then I've got a couple other things that I want to do, like to build a high school up in the Traverse City area to, leave a legacy that, knowing that kids 10, 20, 30 years from now are going to a Christian school and are learning things that I would hope that would be available to anybody. So I'm just focusing on what can I do to really make a difference in other people's lives. And then the other thing is, I just went through a recent treatment, but it's really transformed my life, and I'm experiencing a better marriage than I've ever had before.
Oh, wow. That's
And
awesome.
it um, it's I regret that we didn't experience this from the very beginning, but at 35 years of marriage,
Oh, wow. Congratulations. Woof.
we're on the upswing, and so that's what I would encourage people to understand, that there is always the opportunity for something spectacular that's in front of you, that you just have to set these goals, open your mind up with a sense of gratitude
Hmm.
for what you're experiencing, and then start on a path for just turning those ideas into reality. If you can see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. That's
Mm.
something that Bob Proctor drove from.
Wow. So just creating it and believing in it and working towards it and living towards it, living for it.
Just
And
a relentless belief and a relentless pursuit of finding the best way to live your life.
wow. That is wow. I couldn't have asked for a better way to end our episode. That's being relentless in everything that we do, and being and living intentionally and living deliberately, and and I think a lot of what we talked about is just also just service, right? Being a service to other people, and showing other people that hey, you do have a purpose and you are here for a reason and you were created for a reason. And there's a reason why you're still here. There's a reason why you didn't pass away overseas, or you haven't passed away from anything. Like there's a reason why you're here daily. There's a reason why you're still
And
here
we usually
fighting.
find that great purpose when we're finding ways to help other people.
Mm,
That's it. It's just, I've experienced it over and over again. When I've
yeah.
experienced the most joy, it's when I'm helping my wife, uh, be as happy as possible, or finding ways of helping my employees develop and find their passion. It seems like it's always in the things that we do in service to other people.
Well, that's what God calls us to do, right? That's what the Bible tells us to
It's the
do. That's
bottom
what
line.
that's it, right? And it's crazy because and this will be my last thought. I was saying this the other day to somebody, and I've heard it other places, but it's crazy how there's all these self-help books out there, and there's all these different things out there who tell you, hey, listen, if you give, it's going to change your life, and if you serve others, it's going to change your life. And it's like, wow, all of that stuff was written in this book a really long time ago. Like you
Yeah,
didn't need to write this book. It's already been
right.
written.
It was written a
And
couple thousand years ago.
but hey, it's a different story. But Bob, I really want to thank you for your time. I truly appreciate what you do. If you can just share with us where do we find your book? Where do we find your, the program? Where is the best way for us to donate, for us to help the cause? How do we get a hold of you, Bob?
Sure, I'll just do naked salesperson here and ask people to go to Patriot Promise on Facebook, like and follow. Same thing on Instagram, Twitter. I really need people to kind of plug in and follow my social media so that we can start to reach out more and more. The website, patriotpromise.org, is the best place right now to find the book. Everyone that orders a book, I'll automatically donate one. I'm not making anything from the proceeds of these. You can buy one and donate 5, or buy one and donate 10. I'll give a challenge coin and a patch, and I'll sign the books. But the big thing is just join us on social media. And if you feel it in your heart to go to patriotpromise.org, buy one and donate some books.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. I really appreciate that. I will definitely be, reaching out and getting myself a book and going through it. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for and thank you to your wife, of 35 years. That's an amazing thing. And I'm sure that she's been a huge help on this journey
Absolutely.
of success. So thank you to her from us. And I hope you have a good rest of the night. Do you have any last words, any last final thoughts that you want to kind of just throw out there to everybody?
Well, my big thought is appreciation, gratitude for what you're doing, and for inviting me on. And then just finally, if you're in a dark space or it's tough, and I know people have sacrificed far more than me, but I've experienced some of that stuff. I'm in these positions now, but it's been tough along the way. I've had to overcome a lot of adversity. I just encourage you to kind of get through what you're doing. Reach out, find someone, a friend, a counselor, or anyone to help you get through today so that you can really experience the best part of your life that's in front of you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that, sir. And you heard it here, guys. Figure it out and find someone that's going to be able to help you experience the best parts of you. And thanks again, Bob. I hope you have a good rest of the night, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks to you, Benny.